All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Nitha Ramachandra from the NR Sports Show. This is episode 798, joined by a special guest, former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen. He played for the Washington Bears, 49ers, Falcons, and Texans. Really looking forward to this interview, and he went to UCLA for college. First of all, Logan, this is truly an honor for you to be joining the show today. How are you and your family doing so far during this tough time?
Doing good, man. It has been a little bit of an adventure, but everyone's healthy and happy and got to spend a ton of time with the family, which was like the goal of retiring. So kind of a, blessing in disguise in a lot of ways. And I know that might be insensitive because I know some people had a tough go, but for me, it's been, me and my family have been doing all right. How about you? Been okay?
Yeah, we've been doing good. Just just trying to stay active with the workouts. And here in Jersey, there's still, I think tomorrow they're going to lift all the restrictions up.
Oh,
So
nice.
I'm looking forward to that. And
That'll be cool.
yeah, hopefully there's a light underneath the tunnel where all these places be back to normal. I'm just excited to see. I'm just happy to see fans back into the sports events.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
Yeah, I think that'll be a really nice thing. I think that's one of the things that makes playing professional sports so fun, college so fun, is the support of the fans. And it was kind of an odd year last year with, empty stadiums. So it'll be nice to get everybody back.
And you even see it now with the NBA playoffs going on. The fans are electric right now for the NBA playoffs. So,
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
but for you, I want to start off with your childhood growing up, and for you, obviously, before choosing football, did you play any other sports growing up? And who was your role model that you looked up to in the sports industry?
Yeah, so I played all the sports. I played soccer. I didn't play football until high school. I played a little bit of flag, basketball, volleyball, tennis, whatever I could do. My parents got me into it, and I always enjoyed just being outside and playing, just playing games and stuff. And then when I was getting into high school, my dad just kind of signed me up because he thought it would be a good way for me to make some friends. I really thought I was going to go play college soccer. Like I was on a pretty competitive club team, and my high school soccer team was pretty good, and that was kind of the direction things were going. And then my dad just like, try football out, and I did it. And we got a new coach my junior year of high school. That ended up being nice because he saw a lot of potential in me. He saw something that I didn't really see, which I'm always going to be grateful to him for. And he kind of got me going in the direction of football. And he kind of made some videos for me, pushed my tape, talked to coaches when they come to the high school. And it just worked out in a really nice way. And, like I said, I'm eternally grateful to him and for what he saw and what he did for me and my family. And in terms of sports role models growing up, the guy that I always really enjoyed, because I didn't really watch a ton of him. I watched a fair amount, but not a ton, was Jerry Rice, just because of his work ethic and his diligence. And that's something that I always really thought was just absolutely imperative. Like both my families work full time, and they were always about hard work and how, like, if you're going to do anything, you should do it 110%. And so I thought Jerry Rice at the time, when I was getting into the sport, really exemplified that type of behavior. And that's something that I always admired about him and his game.
Yeah, and you got to wear the same uniform as him too. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so for you, obviously, you started football in high school. So what were the main things as a high school player when you started playing football there, and what did the coaches tell you, and what advice did you get from them? Other than tight end, did you play any other positions?
Yeah, I played receiver. I kicked because I played soccer, so it was kind of a natural thing for me. Was a punter. I played defensive end. I broke the school record for sacks, and if I'm probably being honest with myself, I think I was probably a better defensive player than I was an offensive player. But I didn't really like tackling people. I never really learned the technique, and I never felt comfortable doing it. So I thought, I enjoy catching the football. I enjoy having the ball in my hands. I'd like to do that more, and so that's what I did. And that's what, kind of like, they always say you do what you like. And that's kind of where that led me. In terms of what I learned, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about football. The first day I went out for practice, I didn't know what the positions were. So they said, "Oh, who wants to play cornerback?" And that's where most of the kids went. So I thought, oh, I guess that's like a good position. So I'll go with them, and then as a couple of days went by, the older guys they needed more people at tight end. They needed more people at defensive line. And so they went through and said, you're 6'3" and you're 290 pounds as a freshman, like you need to come in these other groups. Right.
Right.
So it was a crazy learning experience. Like I have memories of working like combination blocks with a tackle. And only when I got to college did I realize that that's what we were supposed to be doing when we were actually playing. You know what I mean? So it took a while and kind of a great learning experience, but really look back on that very fondly.
Wow, that's interesting. So when the day that you did, obviously the first day when you came in and you didn't know any position, what did you do like afterward, after practice, or did you go right to the playbook, or did you study the whole night?
So yeah, I mean, I didn't. I wish I could say it. Yeah, I did that. You know what I mean? But I had no idea
Oh,
like
wow.
what was going on. I didn't know we were going to be learning plays. I didn't. It was just so like I look back on it, and it seems so silly. You know what I mean? But like I was doing it like we just kind of like yeah, like I didn't even really watch football on TV that much. I was like a big soccer guy, and that's what I was going to be doing. And like I said, I enjoyed all sports, but I didn't really care. I played flag football, but I didn't know that much about the game, and so yeah, like I just remember leaving and thinking like, oh, that was kind of interesting. Like it was like I remember being really nervous because it was something so different. But yeah, like yeah, I just probably went home and went to soccer practice. Really, is what I did. You know what I mean? And that pursued that course that I thought my life was going to be on. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a awesome story right there. And for you, how many offers did you get coming out of high school, and what made you choose UCLA?
Yeah, so I think I had 13 or 14. I don't remember exactly. I went to a camp at USC when USC was really good and had a really productive camp there, and it kind of got a lot of interest going for me with different colleges. And excuse me, what I kind of worked on was in terms of finalizing my decision was like my family's very academic. Like my grandfather on my mom's side went to Harvard. My uncle on my dad's side went to Harvard. My dad went to MIT. My aunt went to Tufts. Like college and school is very, very, very important. And so when I was in the selection process, like I looked at schools like Stanford and Duke, UCLA, Harvard was on the table. And
Oh, wow.
one of the things that was interesting about the process is like Duke was kind of just restarting their football team, so they weren't very good. And then Stanford had won maybe 2 games in the 2 years leading up to my freshman year in college. And then Harvard was not like it's good football, but it's not like Division I football. And the school there, they don't really give scholarships the same way they give financial aid, but it's crazy expensive to go there. And it just felt silly to pass up on a school that was pretty good at football, pretty good academically, that was close to home. Like my wife went to UC Irvine, which is about an hour away from UCLA. And, we were dating in high school. And so like I kind of wanted to be close to her and close to my parents, and just kind of worked out perfectly. And then UCLA was just a fantastic fit for me in terms of what I wanted. I got a great education. It's a great climate, great environment, really fun school. And the football was good and it challenged me and it pushed me. So I felt like I was pushed in all facets at that school. And with the other schools, I wasn't sure if that would have happened.
Yeah, so obviously UCLA is a big time college, and obviously in basketball they're competing, and the football team is getting there too. And
Right.
when you were there at that time, what was it like just playing in front of those fans, playing in California, nice weather,
Right.
and what did you learn? Actually, what did you learn from the coaching staff there? Obviously, before you got into the NFL draft.
Right. So kind of a lot of questions there. Like one, you play in the Rose Bowl, which is like a great place to play. We didn't really sell out unless we were playing USC, which is like kind of our crosstown rival. And that game was always super exciting. Great stadium, best grass in the country, I would say. Awesome to play there. And then, in terms of football, like that's where I really kind of got a baptism by fire in terms of learning the game. Like when my junior year of high school, we got a new coach who really kind of accelerated my learning experience and understanding of football. But when I got to college, you kind of realized it was a full-time job, you know what I mean, to learn the offense, study. You talked about studying after practice. Like that's when that behavior really became super important for me. And so everything that I was when I was playing in the NFL kind of was foundationally set that first year of college for me. And, like those coaches and the other thing that's really interesting about my college career is I had 9 different position coaches. I had 5 different offensive coordinators. I had 2 different head coaches. So I got to learn a lot of football, and I got to learn how to learn football. So like when I got to the NFL, like that transition of learning a new offense wasn't quite as steep for me. And that's something that like a lot of people say, oh, that must have been really terrible. And it was at the time. But I think it helped me long-term, helped me with my sticking power. You mentioned I played with 5 different teams in the NFL. I had to learn 5 different offenses, 5 different terminology. And I think that all started when I was in college.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, sometimes it could be tough for players to do that. But for you, uh, the first time that when they made the coaching change, how hard was it? Hard when they made the first coaching change when you were there? Or?
Yeah, so when my position coach left, it was I was disappointed because like I kind of felt like if he had stayed the whole time, I was for sure going to be in the NFL. You know, he just was he like knew how to get the best out of me. He had some NFL background, like he was very diligent in preparing and really was a great communicator and just a good dude. And so I was really disappointed when he left. And then when the OC changed, obviously that's tough, kind of learning a new offense, learning a new scheme, the whole thing. But one of the benefits of that was that, you know, that tight end coach left, ended up going to Washington and was the tight end coach there. And so when he was there, like my senior year, like we were in communication still. And so he was a guy that kind of stood on the table for me and said, hey, I'd like to bring him in as an undrafted free agent. And so, you know, it's funny how life works out. Like a moment of adversity in you know, my freshman year of college actually was something that ended up being very beneficial because I'm not sure – you know, the Washington football team would be interested, would have been interested in me if it hadn't been for him. And so he did a great job of getting me into Washington and staying on the table, like I said, and give me an opportunity. And so like, yeah, like it's tough in the moment when you're going through all this adversity and all this change. However, you know, like life, you gotta let it run a little bit. You know what I mean? You got to kind of see where it leads you because you never know. So.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. Was Jim Morrow there at that time? No, right?
No, he was. So I was with Carl Durrell was my first 2 or 3 years there, and then Rick Neuheisel was the coach.
Okay. All right.
And so obviously two very different like leadership styles. Like Carl Durrell, first time head coach, very kind of a little bit stricter. You know, kind of brought in higher character guys, and you know I think that was I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that environment. And then Rick Neuheisel was a little bit more flexible, and like that's not good. That's not to say it was good or bad. It just was different, and it was something that I had to adjust to. You know, and you kind of learn how to deal with people differently. And I think again, it seemed like a little bit of adversity in the moment, but I think long term it helped me just in my relationships with people in general. You know, understanding that people are different and there's different ways to do things.
Yeah, so obviously your draft process didn't pan out as well. But how tough is it for you when you were sitting there with your family, waiting for your name to get called, and eventually were undrafted? But Washington gave you the chance to start your NFL career. But just take me to the draft process. I know for some players it's tough for them to sit there for a long time, but for you, how did you take the process?
I mean, so I didn't even like. This is gonna sound crazy, but like I didn't think I was gonna get drafted. I knew I wasn't gonna get drafted. I knew there was a possibility. I knew there was some interest. Some teams were interested, but I had like the fact that that was even in the conversation was pretty special. Like my true senior year, I broke my foot and I missed the entire year. So I got a medical red shirt going into my medical senior year, and so I had like zero buzz. I was just a guy, and you know I got some calls from teams, but in reality, you know, I had no expectations. So like, you know, when the seventh round rolled around and I started getting phone calls, oh, we're going to pick you with the next pick, we're going to take you, like that was exciting, but I also kind of knew that maybe that wasn't going to happen, you know? And so my draft started in the end of the 7th round when teams started calling me, and like my agent had done a really good job of prepping kind of the rosters for the different NFL teams, saying, oh, this team only has 2 tight ends, or they've got 2 receiving tight ends, but not a blocking tight end. And we were able to kind of narrow it down to the teams that needed tight ends and what was the best fit for me and my skill set. And Washington and San Diego were the 2 picks. And, you know, kind of through total luck and serendipity, like they both ended up calling me. So I had to make a decision. And I think part of me wanted to stay in California because that's where I was from. And that's where my family and everybody that I loved was. But I kind of leaned on that connection with John Embry, is the tight end coach's name, and said like he's going to take care of me. He's got my best interests at heart, and he did. And I just went out there and played as hard as I could, kind of again with no expectation of making the team. Went through rookie minicamp, OTAs, training camp, and just kind of thought, you know, like this is really cool. This is probably the last time I'm going to get to play football. I got to play with some of my idols, like for whatever reason in high school and college. I really got into the Washington football team, like Mike Sellers, Donovan McNabb was there when I was there. Some of the other big name guys, Clinton Portis, you know, all these guys that were pretty big names were there. And so it was cool to meet them. And I think Chris Cooley, Fred Davis. But in the back of my mind, I thought, I don't belong here with them. And so, you know, when I got through all that process and it was cut day and I got the phone call saying, hey, we want to bring you back for practice squad, I was like outstanding. I went out to lunch with my buddy and we're at Cheesecake Factory, and I get a call from Bruce Allen. He's like, oh, we want to sign you to the 53-man roster. And I literally thought it was a joke. I thought there was someone playing a prank on me, and it ended up being true. And so that was kind of the genesis of my career. And I just approached every day of that process, every day of training, every day of training camp, every day throughout the process, like it was my job, and like with a sense of professionalism, and it just ended up working out for me, and that's something that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, so obviously, speaking of this Washington roster, it was stacked, in my opinion, when you got there. They had Don Shula. I don't know. Don Shula was there. Terry Crews was there, right? If I'm not mistaken.
No, they weren't there when I was there. This was the Washington football team when I was there was Donovan McNabb was the quarterback, Clinton Portis running back, yeah. Mike Sellers was the fullback, London Fletcher, LaRon Landry,
Chris Cooley.
Yeah, Chris Cooley. Outside, Santana Moss was there. Like this kind of murderer's row of just outstanding football players from kind of the decade prior, the 5 years prior. So it was pretty cool to come in and, be with Mike Shanahan, the legendary coach from Denver, which is pretty cool. And Kyle Shanahan, to get him at the beginning of his career, and then work with Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur and all these guys who are now kind of perennial NFL coaches and maybe the best in the league. It was a great experience for me, and such a blessing,
Yeah, speaking of McNabb, we had him on the show a couple months back, and that was
really,
that was an honor talking to him. And we had like two other people from his team on the show too, and it's amazing. What a great player he was. But so for you, when you walked in as a rookie, and obviously, you still had to make the team and prove them wrong. And what were the main things that you worked on that year to make that team? And what was it like just learning from another tight end like Chris Cooley and playing with Donovan McNabb? And what were the things that made that you made the team?
Yeah, so my mom's favorite football player was Donovan McNabb, so it was kind of cool to be in the same locker room with him and see what was going on. But in terms of making the team, I think I already alluded to some of that. Like basically, someone had told me like the only way you make the roster is if you know the playbook. So I practice all day, come back to the room, and some guys would go out to get dinner, and I would just study. I would just study and review and just try to cram as much football as I possibly could, excuse me, into my brain. And I'd say that was probably one of the biggest things. And then like being open to new techniques and open to new coaching, and just every day picking something and being like, this is not going to be this, I'm going to improve on this thing, right? That's my one thing for the day. And then if you improved it, you check that box, you move on to the next thing. Because there was so many things that I needed to get better at. And that's just the way I approach it. Every day, find something to get better at it, and learn everything you possibly can. And so that's what I did.
So obviously, some of these teams like to use two tight end systems, and for you, I'm sure Mike Shanahan did play you and Chris Cooley together at some point. But what were the main things that you learned from Chris Cooley? Obviously, a great tight end, and what was it like just being with him in the same locker room?
I mean, it was outstanding. I mean, Cooley was definitely a big mentor for me early in my career. Him and Fred both. Fred Davis was the other guy. Like I was the third guy, so I was kind of the odd man out, playing special teams, goal line, tight end, 13 personnel. That's one running back and 3 tight ends. I was the guy that would come in those situations, and it was kind of cool to see two different guys handle being pros in different ways. Like Fred Davis was kind of a physical freak, and a guy that you kind of realize like I need to really push myself in the weight room, push myself on the field to kind of keep up with athletes like this. And then Cooley is a great athlete in his own right, but is also very intellectual. And he gave me some of like the best advice I've ever had. Like he said, oh, Logan, you're being a little late off the football here. I said, no, I'm not. He's like, no, if you're leaving on the snap count, you're a little late. And so that's something that even to this day, I really internalize. And I tell young players who come talk to me, like, you got to own those small details, own those little things, those fractions of seconds, those half steps here, half steps there. And so he was really influential in terms of shaping how I viewed the game and viewed the techniques of the position. And something that, again, like I probably wouldn't be in the NFL if it wasn't for him. So.
Yes, I can't believe I forgot about Fred Davis, another great player there. But for you, did you ever think that you could have stayed with Washington throughout your whole career? And obviously, NFL is a business; you got to move on sometimes. But how hard was it for you from moving from team to team, especially with your family?
Yeah, so it was pretty tough, you know. Like I got to a point in Washington, I think after my 5th year, where I thought there's a good chance I could retire here. I would love to do that. I love the city, I love the organization, love the fans. Bought a house, you know, when my son was born. He was, 10 months old. We bought our house out here, which was the one we live in now. And I thought to myself, this is going to be great. And then they ended up signing Vernon Davis, and I kind of knew the writing was on the wall. They paid him a lot of money,
Yeah.
a fair amount of money to come in and play. And I thought to myself, this is, I got to get ready to kind of move on. And I performed the best I could in OTAs. Then I had an opportunity with the Bears. And my wife at the time was, I want to say she was 4.5 months pregnant. And so she ended up staying here in Virginia. And I went to Chicago and lived in a hotel for a year and then came back. My wife had the baby. And then I went to a new team in San Francisco and we moved the family out there. And I got cut and re-signed 3 times in that 1 year and ended up moving my family back to Virginia after like week 8, which was pretty brutal. Then I ended up living in like a hostel basically for 10 weeks. And then I came back, signed with Atlanta.
Wow.
And then, my family, because we were so kind of shell shocked by all the stuff that happened in San Francisco, I ended up staying by myself for the whole year, which is pretty heavy and like kind of depressing to be away from, my young kind of budding family. My wife's by herself. Did the year there, came back, re-signed with Atlanta, and then got cut by Atlanta on final cuts and went to Houston and basically lived in a hotel for like 9 or 10 weeks. So those last 4 years or 5 years of my career were pretty taxing in terms of stressing me in terms of family commitments and football commitments, because it's really hard to be 100% focused, when your family's kind of growing up without you, especially, like my daughter. I was away for more of my daughter's life the first 2 years of her existence than I was home for it, which is pretty tough to deal with, and I think as much as the football became burdensome, to my body and to my mind and to my health, like I think the thing that was probably the most affecting was being away from the family for so much time. So yeah, that was a pretty big deal for sure.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about your experience in San Francisco because
Yeah.
obviously you went back home. You went to UCLA in California. So what was it like going back to California, playing for the 49ers, a historic franchise? But like I said, like you said, you watched Jerry Rice, you grew, and that was your role model. And what was it like wearing the same uniform as him? And what was it like just going back to San Francisco?
So I don't know how much you know about California, but California's a big state. So I lived in LA, and that's like 6.5 hours south of San Francisco. And so I didn't like grow up there, but it is California. And it was a little bit of a culture shock going from Virginia to California again, after being away for 7 years. So when I was out there, like it was really cool. I felt like there was a great opportunity to like be part of the rebuild there. And Kyle had asked me to come, and I was super excited about the opportunity to be back with Kyle because I cannot say enough positive things about him.
Mm-hmm.
But they ended up drafting a guy in the 5th round named George Kittle, and George Kittle, as we all know, is outstanding. So I ended up being relegated to the 3rd guy, which kind of led to that cut re-signed scenario. And Kittle, balled out of control, and that was awesome. And so it was great. It was an awesome experience. It was very stressful for my family and myself. And I enjoyed being out there. I enjoyed the guys like Garrett Selleck, great. Vance McDonald, got to meet him and hang out with him and be back with John Embry, which was outstanding. And got to see, kind of what it looks like to start a rebuild with an organization, which was really cool. But it was a little bit of a culture shock, a little different than Southern California, a little different than Virginia. And it was a tough transition for my wife, all of her friends being in Virginia to go back out to California. So yeah, it was an experience. I'd say some good, some bad. But like with anything, it's a great opportunity to learn about yourself amidst some adversity,
Yeah, I'm gonna call your story the underdog story, man. This is I learned like when all the guests we had on the show, I learned a lot, and your story is like kind of inspiring. So,
I appreciate that.
yeah, because for you, so looking back at your career, obviously, how grateful are you to be in this position to be able to play the game that you loved, and obviously you didn't play till high school and going through a lot of adversity, and you didn't know at the beginning in high school you didn't know anything about positions, but now you do. You're an expert in it, and obviously you played in the game. And how grateful are you to be in this position right now?
I mean, I'm incredibly grateful. Like I think, one of the things I always tell people who ask me this question is I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity because it taught me so much about myself. It shaped me in this really dramatic way. And we talked about the adversity a little bit. And, you know, like, I don't think I have any like tremendous adversity. Like, it's professional adversity, but, you know, personally, like, you know, obviously the last couple of years were really tough with my family, but we were really blessed. I was making really good money, and I was getting to play the game that I loved and doing something that was really challenging and fulfilling and on multiple ways. And so that was great. But yeah, like, I'm just so grateful for those 10 years and the 5 years of college, because I just learned so much about what I'm capable of doing. And, you know, now, like, post football, like, I'm able to challenge myself and push myself in a way that I wouldn't have been able to, I don't think, if I hadn't had that experience. So I'm extremely grateful to the NFL, you know, to the game, and because it shaped me, and it turned me into something that I'm really proud to be at this point, I guess, if that makes sense.
So whoever didn't know about Logan Paulsen, what did you bring to the game, and did you compare? Who did you compare yourself to as tight ends?
Right. So I was kind of like you wouldn't know any tight ends that I would compare myself to, because I was like a blocking tight end. I was like an extension of the offensive line. My first probably 4 or 5 years, I could run a little bit. I had some movement skills, but I never was like a burner. I came in, I think I ran like a 4.8, 4.9, 40 at my pro day. I don't have great explosive qualities, but I understood like the techniques and leverages of how to move people in line. And I was able to carve out a really nice career being a specialist at that. And that's something I'm really proud of. Is I was kind of one of the last of a dying breed in terms of blocking tight ends. And you know, I think you know, I had most catches I had in a year was maybe 34 or something like that, 30. I don't even remember. Scored 4 or 5 touchdowns in a year, but nothing gaudy, no crazy statistics. Like, I earned my money like grinding people's faces in for a living, you know. And that's something I never would have thought I could do if I was, you know, high school me, you know, like, the physical toughness that I had to cultivate to do that was surprising even to myself. And that's something that, again, like, I would never have learned that about myself if it hadn't been for football and the physical challenges that the game presents. So.
So now, transitioning from your career, obviously you break down the game and you're like an analyst. And what's it like now covering the game from a different aspect, seeing these young players develop into their talents? And I think I've seen your Instagram, and you're one of the best video breakdowns when it comes to talent. Outside of, I think Dan Olowski's a great one there too, but I think I'll put you up there too with Dan. So
Thanks, I appreciate that. I think the biggest thing is just the amount of empathy I have for the guys. You know, like, one of the things that comes up a lot of times in interviews is like, oh, this guy sucks, this guy's no good. And like, I know that guy's journey. I was that guy for a long time, guy who was kind of a fringe on the roster, barely hanging on. And I know how hard it is on them and their families to be in that position and be working their tails off. And, you know, like, it's a game that gets so much visibility and so much criticism from people who have never done it at a high level. So, like, when I talk about it, I just have so much empathy for the guys that are still playing. And hopefully they hear that when I evaluate them, and the respect that I have for what they do still. But yeah, like, it's been a really cool opportunity to transition and kind of keep football in my life. And kind of, again, the game is challenging me in a way that I wasn't expecting. You know, I never enjoyed talking in front of a camera or talking to people. You know, period. My in-laws always tell the story of how I was so shy in the beginning, they didn't even know if I could talk. And then now here I am talking to complete strangers online for, you know what I mean? Like, that's such a big transition. And football was a big catalyst for that. So, yeah, I think hopefully I'm giving those guys the respect they deserve, and it's been nice to kind of keep football around, you know?
yeah, so when you break down these college prospects, mainly you break down the Washington players that they drafted this year and the years before. So do you reach out to them to give them advice, or how do you like when they get drafted? Did you reach out to them?
So no, not usually. I always found people who did that were like, you know, trying to insert themselves into someone's story, and I didn't love that. I've had a couple guys reach out to me, which I'm really glad to do and help out. And, you know, I do some personal training on the side, like, you know, I'd say 20 to 23 hours a week doing that. And some of those guys are NFL players that meet with me, and we go over techniques and philosophies, and, you know, like, kind of just take what I was doing my last couple of years in the NFL, like a pretty significant mentorship role, and just kind of teaching them how to be professionals. And I let them seek me out. And you know, that's been a pretty special experience for me, again, like, a very humbling experience to have that opportunity.
So for you now, what are you most looking forward to for the, like when you get the next gig or something, be on like a radio station or have your own show, or being when you move on to the analyst world? So what are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just enjoying every new experience. You know what I mean? It's been, like I said, it's been a very awesome learning experience. Met some really cool people with the various opportunities that I've had, and I think that it's just really cool, you know, to kind of be in a new space and see the challenges that these guys face every day. You know, in terms of the prep for shows and limited notice, and kind of having always to create something to talk about. That's been super interesting. But the thing that I'm most interested in is like the training side of my life. And then like I'm trying to start my own business, like with a piece of exercise equipment I invented. So that's just then again, like, you know, I'm very blessed to be in this position. And I give a lot of credit to the game, you know, and because like financially I wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for what the game did for me. So pretty cool.
Yeah. So what advice would you give these young kids or young athletes that are trying to reach to their goals?
I mean, I would say like my high school yearbook quote is something that a lot of people have it and they never think about it again, but it's something I think about almost every day. It's like hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. And I'm sure people have heard that before, but like, you know, everyone is genetically different, right? There are guys who, you know, there's guys like Julio Jones who are 6'3", 230, and they run a 4.3 40, and they have like a 50-inch vertical jump and all these crazy DK Metcalf,
Yeah.
Trent Williams, guys who will always be athletically superior to you. But I think it's important to challenge yourself and push whatever your genetic potential is as far as you possibly can. And I think, you know, don't judge yourself on what other people are doing. Judge yourself on yourself, because that's the ultimate metric in my opinion. Like I spent way too much time in my life like worrying about what other people were doing and how other people were performing, when really I'm the catalyst. You know, I was the catalyst for my own life, and I should have been focusing a lot more on the things that I could control as opposed to things I couldn't. So my advice would just be work your tail off, especially if you're playing like high school, like just enjoy the hell out of that. You know what I mean? Just enjoy that experience, because that's the last time in your life, if you're going to play other things, college, NFL, whatever it may be, semi-pro, Canadian football, whatever, that it's going to be fun. Like just make sure you are in that moment and enjoying the hell out of it, because it's going to be gone. You're going to look back and man, I wish I would have spent more time appreciating the guys I was playing with, having fun with the game, taking advantage of practice. Because I've had so many guys come up to me over the course of my career being like, man, I you know, I played in high school. I'd love to be playing now. And that opportunity doesn't stay for everyone. But if you have it now and it's right there at the table for you, like makes you just enjoy it, man. Savor every second of it.
Hmm. So we do this now. We do this fun little segment on the show called the rapid fire segment. You ready for this?
Sure, I guess so.
All right. So obviously you just mentioned Julio Jones. What are your thoughts on this? That he wants to be out of Atlanta now, and I guess I'm hearing that Falcons are ready to trade him.
Yeah, I think that's part of the business, right? One of the best players at the position in the history of the NFL, in my opinion, and one of the best players I ever played with. Great dude, great teammate, but the game always catches up to you at some point, right? And I think, you know, despite all those things we just talked about in terms of him being a fantastic athlete and still having some in the tank, like the game leaves no stone unturned. Tom Brady's the guy who's closest right now, but eventually it's going to get him too. So I think it's reasonable for Atlanta to do that, and I hope he lands in a place that's good for him.
Yeah. So favorite memorable game that you played in UCLA and NFL?
Oh gosh, it's been a while since UCLA. My freshman year in college, we played. I think we had like 6 games where we came from like a double-digit deficit behind, ended up winning. And so I didn't play a ton of those games. I was playing a little on special teams, but to be a part of those games and be on the sidelines for those games were pretty cool. And then my favorite game from my college career was when we beat USC when they were ready to go to the national championship, 13-9. I think it was 2007. So that was pretty exciting. And then favorite NFL game was probably the first start I had, which was against the New York Giants, which was awesome. And then against the New York Giants the following year, I had a pretty good game. So those games were great. And then we had a playoff game, which I performed pretty well in. And so that was awesome too. So all those games, you know, like there's so many positive memories over the course of a 15-year, including college career. Like, but yeah.
So I know you played against Aaron Rodgers throughout your career. So what are your thoughts on him that he wants out possibly? And this story is getting crazier by the minute.
It is getting pretty wild, actually. Yeah, you know, I don't know. My gut, my just totally unfiltered, honest reaction to this is that like he's in a good situation there. I don't understand why he'd want to leave. He feels slighted by the fact they brought in a backup quarterback, but like if you look at it from the organization's perspective, like what are they supposed to do? Just wait till you retire and then have nobody lined up when you leave? Like that was the start of his career with Brett Favre. He sat backing Brett Favre up for a couple of years until it was time to move on from Brett Favre. And you think he would have empathy for that kind of role and that kind of position, but I guess not. So I think Aaron's going to get what Aaron wants. You know, like when you're as good as he is and you've made as much money as he is, you can do some things that most people can't do. You can sit out for a year. You can do all sorts of stuff. And I think he has all the leverage in this situation. And from what I understand, from what I've read, he is a guy that is very serious about things that he says, and he doesn't say them lightly, and he doesn't retract the things he says. So as much as I think it's silly, like he obviously feels very passionate about it, and I think he's going to be out of there.
Funniest teammate that you play with, and then
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I played with this guy. I forgot his name now. Golly, Kareem Moore, I think was his name, and he was basically like a stand-up comedian. Like he was one of the funniest human beings. Like any little thing was just hilarious. Like he just would make hilarious. You know what I mean? And I've only played with him for a year, but I just remember like I wasn't even that good friends with him, but I'd be in the locker room with him and he'd be cutting up jokes and doing impressions and just a really and pretty good football player too. So
so for you, I'm gonna put you on the spot here right now. Where do you think Aaron Rodgers ends up?
you know, I would like to see him end up I think in Denver, I think is a good fit for him. I think Denver is a really nice fit. I think they've got a really nice, talented receiving core. I think they've got a good offensive line. I think that's the best situation for him. That's a team that's shown a little bit of a history of kind of making this move, like with Peyton Manning, like bringing him in and kind of usurping Tim Tebow. You know, like now they're going
Yeah.
to get Locke out of there with this with Aaron Rodgers, and you know they might only get a year or two out of him, but if they get a Super Bowl out of him, that would be pretty special. So I think that's where I feel like the best fit is, and I feel like there's a history of that. Obviously, you know, I don't know. I can't think of any other team that would be willing that's close enough and is only a quarterback away and could capitalize on a big trade in a year or two.
Speaking of Tebow, do you think that's going to work out in Jacksonville? Do you think he makes the team first?
Oh, I think he's got a tough road, man. I think you know he tried to play H-back, fullback, tight end in New York. Obviously, that didn't work out for him because it's tough, man. It's tough to make that switch. Like think about you know guys have played tight end, receiver, running back, fullback, whatever it is, for 5 years of college football. They've built up a Rolodex of information about the position, about the techniques, and now you're asking a guy who's never played the position before to make a switch, and he's taken a tremendous layoff as well. So he's 33 years old, not a lot of runway left. I mean, he's a great guy, great work ethic, all those things. And so you hope it works out for him, but it's going to be challenging for him. And so I would say if I was a betting man, I'd probably say no, but you know, like I hope that's a bad bet, you know, because I always want guys to succeed if this is what they want to do. It just sometimes the cards are too stacked against you.
So this is obviously, like I said earlier, your story is inspiring. And so what's it like now sharing your career and your story to other platforms like this? And I saw your interview with one of our friends before, but what's it like to sharing your stories on each platform?
It's just been, I think it's been fun just to meet people, you know, meet people on the grind. You know what I mean? Like you said, you had 700 episodes. Like that's somebody who's putting a lot of time on task, and it's cool to like some of these stories, like through these podcasts, are people who love sports, love the game, and like they're spending so much time trying to grow their brand and their business and their identity as a platform. And I think that's been really cool for me. You know, like it does my story. It's my story. I know it really well, but it's cool to meet guys like you. And I did another one yesterday where you get to meet some guys who just love ball. Like they have their own stories, their own lives going on. And so that's pretty cool, you know?
Yeah, so you're not gonna like this, but I'm a big Dallas Cowboy fan, and I want to talk to you about Blake Jarwin. Though he's coming off from an injury, I feel like this guy can have an underrated. He's to be honest, for me as a Cowboy fan, he's underrated because I always watch him. But do you think coming off an injury, do you think he can become the tight end that we expect him to be, or what? What do you like about him?
I like both. What's the other tight end's name down there? Do you
Oh,
remember?
Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, so both those guys I think are underrated. I think they're very, very talented.
Yeah,
I think they're solid in the run game. They catch the ball well. They make play. I think that's they're not flashy in the sense of, of like Kittle or Kelsey, but they're like consistent, like C plus, B minus, B
yeah,
value players at the position, and you get them cheap because they're on their rookie deals. And I think they just they're good players to have. Like tight end's a position, unfortunately,
yeah,
unless you have like a top three guy, so Waller, Kittle, Kelsey, maybe Kyle Pitts. We'll see how he does this year.
yeah.
Um, that like you just need a guy, a warm body to play well for a long time. And I think they've got two guys there. So if I'm them, I feel pretty good about the tight end situation. And I think you've got two guys who could catch 60 balls a year, which is exactly what you want at the position, especially given the fact they have all these tremendous wide receivers there. So you don't need game changers at the position, but I think those guys are really good football players. And I think they run well. They put their hand in the dirt. They do the little things the right way. Like when I watch them on tape, I'm always happy. You know what I mean? I'm always like pleasantly surprised with their performance. And I think that just is a testament to them and the way they work and their skill set, which is maybe underrated and undervalued, but I think it's a good skill set.
Yeah. So before we get to the last two things, so this is a two-part question. Obviously, I want to get your take on Kyle Pitts. To be honest, he's a one generational talent in my opinion. But like you said, we have to wait and see what happens. And the other part to this question, I want to ask about the New England Patriots because obviously they got the two best tight ends in free agency with Hunter Henry and Jonah Williams. I feel like they're going to go back to the Aaron Hernandez and Gronk situation with the two tight end system. The first Kyle Pitts. What are your thoughts on Kyle Pitts?
So if you guys check out my Instagram, watch the video there. Like I love Kyle Pitts. I mean, I've watched the top tight ends coming out every year since 2010, 2009, my senior year of college, and he's the best one I've evaluated by far. I've called all my former tight end coaches and GMs that I know and talent evaluators, and he's the best. Like my old tight end coach has been coaching tight ends for 34 years. Best guy he's evaluated, and so when you turn the tape, I mean, there's very few people who can line up in line, block a defensive end, line up against the number one wide receiver as number one DB as an X wide receiver, and beat that guy in a one-on-one situation, and beat a defensive lineman, line up in the slot. Like he's got a tremendous skill set, and it's scary to think. I would have preferred that he goes to an offense that's a little bit more ready to accept a playmaker like that. I think Arthur's offense is very similar to Kyle Shanahan's, but if you look at what he did with Jonnu, when Jonnu was there, Jonnu was just kind of like a normal tight end in the offense. They've never had a guy that's been used in the way that I think you need to use Kyle Pitts. So I think that's something that I'm going to be really keeping an eye on this offseason is can they maximize his talent and maximize his abilities? Because I think he's a very, very special player.
Mm-hmm. So the last two things here, our team is part of this foundation called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. He's a former NFL coach, and now he's the coach, offensive coordinator at Tennessee State with Eddie George. We're trying to help him prevent human trafficking and making sure the community stays safe and the kids stay safe. And so we're really grateful to be part of this foundation. So I'm going to send you the page so you can go check it out. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everyone talks about the adversity. You were talking about the adversity that I faced. Like, could you imagine being like a medical professional during this year, like especially during the early stages of COVID, like not understanding fully the virus and then going into work every day and putting your life essentially on the line for random strangers. So yeah, like I would say, thank you guys so much. Thank you for all that you've done. Like, no amount of words and praise and is going to be able to express how I feel about that group of people, but like thank you is all I could say, and really appreciate what they've done. And yeah, man, it's great work.
Yeah, well said. And there it is. Wraps up episode 798 with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen. He's now analyst covering the game. He does a great job breaking down the videos. Go follow him on all social media formats. Like I said, he's like Dan Orlowski breaking down film. Now we got to see Logan on ESPN or something. We got to get you an ESPN gig, man. It's your time to shine, man, as an analyst. So
that would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're a great one out there, and but like I said, you have an inspiring story. Keep up the great work. You and your family stay safe, and thank you again.
Thanks so much, man, for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
No problem.